Driving the culture forward, this is HYPEBEAST Radio. Today we're here with designer, DJ, all-around creative, Heron Preston.
What up?
Pleasure to have you sitting down with us, man. I know you got a busy schedule.
Thanks
Thank you for finding
me.
time.
Yeah.
And we like to start off kind of like with like an intro in case people aren't really familiar with your work. So kind of, you know, if you could make a long story short, kind of like your path from, I guess, probably around Parsons, I guess it was when you came to New York,
right.
From Parsons up until present day.
Man, I started making stuff before Parsons. Like I had a T-shirt line back in San Francisco, and it was called Heron Preston. And I was really inspired by this T-shirt line out of New York called Clarendon. And their logo was like in cursive, and it looked super luxury, but it was like a street line. And I just liked the high and the low that it was like communicating in the streets. And so I was like, man, I want to have like that similar type of brand that's like high and low. And I was like, I couldn't come with any other name. Like I'm bad at coming up with like names, like brand names. So I was like, Heron Preston sounds kind of fancy. Like Preston is my middle name. And so I was just like, I'm just going to do like my own like Calvin Klein or Tommy Hilfiger. It's going to be Heron Preston. And like my logo was like in cursive, and it had these like really nice satin labels, and it was like really soft, like American Apparel t-shirts. And like that was the very first product that I started to make under Heron Preston. And then I started college. I came to New York, Parsons. And then I like stopped making the t-shirts for a while because I was actually screen printing them myself by hand. And then when I left the screen printing like factory in San Francisco, I was like, fuck, like I really like miss overseeing my production. I miss making the t-shirts myself. I don't want to do it anymore. And so I stopped, and then I started blogging. I started a WordPress, and just because I knew how to code, I knew HTML, and I also knew like Photoshop. So I just brought those two together, and I started documenting my life in downtown New York as like a young skate kid from San Francisco who just moved to like this big city for college. I was just like super excited, and I was like, my friends back home should know like what I'm up to. So I started documenting my life. I had like a little Canon, and I would just photograph all the interesting people that I would meet on the streets or at parties, and I would just post those photos and videos like the next day on my website. And I kind of had a name for myself on like Nike Talk, and like I would post on this like underground discussion board called Splay, which was designed by the same guy who designed the Supreme website. And so we were all these like streetwear nerds. That's also how I like started meeting Virgil on like Splay and like talking on these like discussion boards. And so I already kind of had a name for myself like on the internet. And then I started this blog, and so you know I had instantly had like readers, and one of those readers was Aaron Bondaroff's partner, Al Moran. They have No Wave together, and Moran Bondaroff, like the galleries. And Al was printing like party flyers in Miami at the time. And so he had a printer. And so he wanted to start making art books. And he approached me, he wrote me an email and said, hey, like all these photos on your blog of like Aaron and like Dash and like all these cool kids, like that could be a book. Do you want to do a book with me? And I was like, hell yeah, like sure, let's do a book. And so I did this yearbook because I'd always had this like running joke that living downtown New York felt like a big kid's high school to me. Like
still does.
It still does. Like anyone who lives here, it just feels like we're having fun with our friends, but we're just a little older. Like all of the restaurants we eat at were like the cafeterias, and the yellow taxis were like the school buses, and like the streets were like the hallways in high school, and like all of my friends were like the student body, and like all of the more successful people around me were like my teachers, and all the drama and everyone hooking up was just like high school. So I was like, we should have a yearbook for downtown New York. And so that was the idea that I pitched him, and he was into it. And so I did this Polaroid yearbook. It had like 200 kids in it, mostly from like Parsons and NYU, and then some other kids outside of those schools. But we all lived down here in New York. And Nike ended up sponsoring like the launch of the yearbook. It was called The Young and the Banging, and it was launched out of their like 255 Elizabeth space, which used to be the very first like playground for Nike ID. Like before Nike ID really blew up and became bespoke at 21 Mercer or Nike Lab now, it was this like testing experimental space that was only invite only. Like Vashti would go and all the cool kids from downtown would go and like Nike ID their Air Force Ones. But once that idea ended and it blew up, it was an empty space. Like it was just sitting there collecting dust. And so I had pitched them my yearbook at that same time. It was like an empty space. And they're like, yo, we have a space. Do you want to launch it there? And I was like, sure. And they're like, are you comfortable curating this like installation all by yourself? And I was like, yeah. And I had never done anything like that before in my life. But I said yes because it was an amazing opportunity. And like I remember leaving the offices and being like, what the fuck did I sign up for? Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And like...
That's like a very high school mood. Like not knowing,
but still like playing it off. Like oh yeah, I got this. Like bullshitting your way through class. And so... I was like, sure. So I had a job at the time. I was working at this like consultancy, this creative consultancy that was also in Soho. So it was luckily I could take my lunch breaks because it was a secret project. I didn't want to tell my job that I was doing all of this extra work outside of work. So it was secret. So I would use my lunch breaks to go to the gallery, direct the agency building out this high school themed installation. I want my blackboard here and I want my bleachers there, and like the back to school photos are going to be over here in this corner, and like these lockers are going to be here that my friends are going to fill up like as if it were their lockers from high school back in the day. And like then I would go back to work after lunch, after my hour lunch break was up. And so that was going on for a couple months, launched it, and it was like wildly successful. There was a line out the door. I had yearbooks. It was just like dope. And then after that, I started working for Nike. Shortly after that, I was doing like the sportswear. I was a sportswear marketing specialist in New York. So like when the Yeezys came out and you saw like Ian Connor with the Yeezys, like I was the one who gave Ian Connor those Yeezys. I was like seeding all the cool kids, all the product at the time. I was that kid who was in the streets, but also in the offices, and kind of like the link between like the company and like culture. The ASAP Destroyer jackets, like I did those. I was programming the space on Bowery during the World Cup, and just doing all the customization for the Destroyers for like all the VIP appointments. Like just that kid connecting Nike to all the cool shit happening in New York.
The pavement.
And the pavement. And then then after that, I started doing like Nike Lab Digital for like the global. I moved into global, and I was spending a lot of time in Portland. And then, I launched all the social media for all the Nike Labs. And then shortly after that, I left the company. That was like a 5-year kind of like 5-year time I was there.
Yeah, so you felt like you graduated at that point, right?
Yeah, I felt like I graduated and felt like some of the bigger ideas that I had for the company weren't going anywhere, and I just got a little frustrated. So I was just like, I dipped. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do after that, but I was just like, fuck it, I'll figure it out. Like I have enough like connections, and I feel like I'm smart enough to like figure something out. And so then I started working with Kanye, on Donda with like Virgil and Justin and Matt and Nathan, and just a whole squad of us, Elon, and started just art directing anything that Ye wanted us to kind of tackle. So I started working on like the Adidas Yeezy the first show, and I was kind of in charge of like doing the invitations and literally like pitching like 200 different variations of how the first invite should look, and then like also like packaging them and working on all kinds of just anything that creative Ye needed us to kind of tackle. We were kind of like that army internally, working on all these like awesome projects. Did the first zine with Jackie Nickerson. Shot that at Milk Studios, went out to Paris to scout the location for the event, which actually ended up being at the Louis Vuitton Foundation. So I was working on a bunch of cool projects with Ye. And then, I eventually kind of graduated from that. And now I'm doing, my collection. I actually left out of Been Trill. I forgot about Been Trill out of that whole entire story, actually. Crazy. I was doing Been Trill during Nike, actually.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I was like doing Been Trill during Nike. Mm-hmm. And actually at the not 255, but actually at the Bowery space where we were customizing those destroyer jackets. So that's where the Been Trill kind of picks up at that part of the story where I was like customizing destroyers. Yeah, 2 chapters back. I remember Virgil and Matt and Justin. I didn't even know Justin at the time, JJJJound.
Yeah.
So those 3 dudes walk in straight after tour in London with Ye, Watch the Throne, and they walked in the space, and it was kind of like 5, 6 p.m., like kind of wrapping up the day. And they're like, yo, we just started throwing these parties called Been Trill. Do you want to throw these parties with us? And I was like, hell yeah. Like, how could you say no to throwing parties with your friends? It sounds like the best thing ever. And so we started throwing these parties called Been Trill. It was around the same time as like Osama bin Laden. And so I thought they were playing off of his name. So I thought it was spelled B-I-N, Trill. And so I was going around like, oh, this is lit. It's like a bin Laden like fucking ripoff. But then it was not. But I was still excited to be a part of it.
You saw it on paper, and you're like,
no, I think they showed me, a photo or something of like one of the first tees that was made. I forget what they showed me, or a banner or something. And then I finally got to see it on paper, and I was like, oh wait, it's not. But it's still cool.
Yeah, it's not as edgy as I thought it was.
I'm still down. I'm still down. And so we took on the identity of like a boy band. And again, it was still just us having fun and not taking anything serious. We were like, it's like act like we're a boy band and like we'll all dress the same, like the Jackson 5. And so we also started wearing the same T-shirts. And those T-shirts became popular because kids wanted them. And so we started so that was the beginning of like the Been Trill, like the clothing, the merch, the apparel. And then, that took off. It has a story of its own. And so, that's kind of like I guess my like creative journey, Been Trill, and then also like with Kanye, and then now I'm doing my own collection.
And by doing your own collection, you're kind of getting back, like you said, that your first company was named after you way before you even came to New York. So it's kind of like you're getting back to
I'm kind of, I guess, resurrecting it.
Yeah.
And I'd always done little projects, and I would put my label Heron Preston on them, like the NASCAR bootleg or the Givenchy bootleg or the Street Sweepers. But it was never like a full-fledged, I was doing more of those as like an artist project, not necessarily as like a brand or like a collection. But after my Department of Sanitation project, decided to kind of just take it to the next level. Kind of just made the most sense, kind of like as a natural kind of like progression. So now I'm doing the full collection of Heron Preston.
Yeah, so let's talk about like your collaboration with the Department of Sanitation. Like that was even off of like a whim, like for an email, right? Like you were just thinking about that, and then you're like, let me just go ahead and reach out, see who I can reach out to, and then try to get this like off the ground. Yeah,
100%. It all came from this place of wanting to have a breakthrough and really challenging myself to like come up with a breakthrough for like a collaboration. I didn't want it to be so typical or predictable, and that's just who I am. I've always just kind of really pushed myself to just be like that standout kind of idea that like I don't care if it's like weird or if it's awesome, it's like its own unique idea. And so I really kind of like pushed myself to come up with this type of idea. And it was just thanks to a friend of mine who also challenged me to apply my design and innovation, my art and fashion to like a wicked issue. And I was like, man, that sounds really interesting. Like, I know I care about stuff in the world, but I just didn't really know what I really cared about because I never really challenged myself to really think about what I really cared about that I could incorporate into how I make a living. So it kind of, that question plagued me for like 2 years. Like, what do I care about? Like, what do I care about? What do I care about? And so I was swimming in the ocean one day and this plastic bag brushed against my arm. And I was like, I hate litter bugs. Like, they ruin the environment, and when we're at the beaches, they just mess up our selfies. Because if you see like a red Solo cup in the sand or trash, it doesn't look nice. Yeah. So I was like, man, that's what I care about. I care about the environment. I hate litter bugs. I want to figure out a way to like clean up the beaches, and that's kind of how it started. But then I had also remembered that I'd always wanted to redesign uniforms. I've always been inspired by like workwear. So it kind of all collided, all these kind of like desires of mine all kind of collided in the ocean. And I was like, whoa, like the Department of Sanitation in New York, where I live, they're a uniform force that cares about the same things that I care about. They have like "Don't Litter" printed on the trucks. I was like, and they have like the illest streetwear. They're streetwear to me. So I was like, those are the uniforms that I want to redesign. And I also have like this environmental angle to it because that's what pulled me into it from the beginning. So I had this idea to do a t-shirt collab using all vintage t-shirts that I would rebrand with DSNY branding over the existing graphics and sell those t-shirts at like opening ceremony. Was like the very first kind of retailer that I thought about. I was like, we'll sell it at opening ceremony. It'll be like old uniforms that I upcycle, and also these vintage t-shirts, all DSNY, workwear themed for Fashion Week. And we use the money to donate back to like the DSNY. Because I knew they were a city agency, there's a lot of budget cuts. So I knew that if there was money involved that I would just give them, donate back to them, they might be into the idea. And they were. And so I pitched them the idea after trying to get in touch with them for like literally like a year. So right when I got that idea on the beach, got back to New York and I started Googling if they had ever done anything artistic or creative before. If I came at them with this t-shirt idea, would they even get it? So I started researching, and I came across a talk that was happening at the City New York Museum uptown, hosted by their in-house anthropologist, this woman named Robin Nagel. And she tweeted out, I came across her tweet through Google, and the tweet said, like, DSNY equals most like important uniformed force in the city. Come find out why. I was like, perfect. This is my perfect opportunity to come like test the waters to see if they're into this shit or not. So I go up, and during her talk, I learn about their in-house, their artist in residency named Mural Ukulele. And once I learned they had an artist in residency who had already done all these amazing art projects.
Like the mirrored garbage truck,
yeah,
right?
The mirrored garbage truck, which is called the Social Mirror, which made its debut in the 1983 art parade. Or Touch Sanitation, her art performance, where she shook the hands of every sanitation worker in New York City at the time. It was like in the late 70s, early 80s. It took her like 1 year to shake everyone's hand. It was like 9,000 workers. And as she shook their hands, she said, "Thank you for keeping New York City alive." And it was like a milestone in like the art performance world. Like no one had ever done something like that big before in that style, in that way. And it was all about maintenance, kind of like communicating through her work that without sanitation workers, like maintaining the city and trucks going out and back in 24 hours a day, New York City would die. Like without them, New York City would die. So it was all about shining a positive light on sanitation workers and kind of eliminating all the negative words used in the public about sanitation workers. So when I learned about all of her work, I was like, holy shit, they've already done art projects. They've already done creative stuff. So my chances are a little higher of them agreeing to maybe do this collab with me. So it was really like through her work, paving the way, that really kind of like accelerated like my drive to really do my project with them. And so I finally... So I emailed Robin. I was like, hey, can I get in touch with Mural? And she was like, no. And I was like, fuck, how I'm so close, but now I'm so far away. Like, who do I hit up now? Like, she was the perfect plug at the department that could help sell in my idea and make it and realize it. But she's told me no. And I was like, God, fuck, like, who am I going to hit up? So I kind of put the idea on pause, but I didn't let it go. So fast forward a year later, No Wave, Aaron Bondaroff was hosting a basketball tournament at NADA, which is his art festival, Basketball City. Like Eddie Wang, and like everyone was playing in it. I think Tremaine, like the No Vacancy homies, like everyone was playing in it. So I go down to the basketball tournament, halftime, go to the bathroom inside of the art festival. As I'm leaving the bathroom, I just look up and I see this I see a projection. And it's like these 4 women speaking about like their various art projects in the industry. And the projection I saw as I'm leaving was Mural and her Touch Sanitation project. And I was like, holy shit, like, what the fuck? Like, I put this idea on pause. I haven't even been pursuing it. It was just like a strike of luck, you know, and like amazing timing. And so I went to the talk, and it was this woman, Dia Vij, who works for the New York Cultural Affairs Office, and Touch Sanitation and all of Mural's work falls under the Cultural Affairs Office. They do all like the public artworks you see around New York City. And so Dia was presenting Mural's work. And I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. I was like flipping out. So I stayed through the talk. After the talk was over, went to Dia. I told her, like, yo, I have this big idea. The same idea I already pitched to Robin a year ago. I was like, I have this deck. I just need to sit down with you. Like, please. I was almost like shaking because I felt like this was like my make or break moment. A year later, I got in touch with someone closer to helping me do it. And I was like, man, I have to fucking do this. Like, so I finessed my way to having her sit down with me the next day. I pitched this presentation. She's like, this is amazing. Then she finally put me in touch with the right people at the Department of Sanitation who like gave me the green light to actually do the project, which became Uniform.
Yeah. And you're like fully invested in it now, like in the Zero Waste Initiative. You're doing like tours and stuff, and you're really just trying to educate like what you learned along on the process, right?
Yeah, and like I'm not an expert at all in this. Like I just started learning about and being interested in like sustainability and like zero waste through this project. And again, going back to like what I cared about. It started all with the environment and like my parents raising me like not litter, and it all started there, very elementary kind of like understanding of like what's right and what's wrong. And then through this project, I started learning a little bit more about sustainability and like zero waste and just becoming super fascinated, and also learning that the textile and apparel industries are the second most polluting in the world, second to oil. And I didn't even know that. And so I'm here making clothes all day and having fun with my friends, not knowing that we're actually like polluting also, like on the low, but not on the low, but on the low. Like I didn't know that. Yeah. And so just also using like even my first collection, just kind of communicate that and trying to just, challenging people to also care about something, not necessarily caring about the environment, but like, this is what I figured out that I kind of care about, and this is what happened. I did this whole project called Uniform with the DSNY, and so hopefully, there's more people who out there in the world who get inspired by just challenging themselves.
Yeah, I think there's like a challenge though, like for fashion designers and people like that to get into activism. Like you kind of had to wake up to it. You had to like literally brush against the plastic bag. Right. Like, yo, I got to do something here. Yeah. And I mean, like it's the same thing where like when Virgil does a show where he uses like Syrian refugees as a motif and stuff like that, and there's kind of like there's a limit to activism on the runway, but you can do like a whole collaboration and build from there. Right. You know what I mean? From the ground up.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many ways that you can get involved or not. It goes back to if you care or not, and then what you care about. There's so many fucking issues in the world, that people can get behind. It doesn't necessarily just have to be like this one issue. Like there's so many, but again, it goes back to like, what do you value? What do you care about?
Yeah. And I mean, and speaking of the latest stuff, like you're on a world tour basically behind this stuff. And I guess that's kind of unusual for a fashion designer to do a retail tour. So what was sort of the concept behind the show house?
It's unusual for a retail tour, and I guess unusual for a collection to be launched in like Russia, in Moscow.
Can we talk about Russia? Yeah. I literally I grew up over there.
Oh, you did?
We talked about this as like when we were preparing for this. It's like I grew up over there. And like I remember when the mock necks dropped and you like kind of started using Cyrillic all over the place, and I was like, yo, what happened? Right? Like, and then literally like within a year it was like Gosha kind of exploded. Yeah. And now everybody seems to be like fascinated with the culture. Yeah. Over there specifically. Like I think like for a lot of people downtown New York is kind of like was for a long time like Mecca for like fashion stuff. Right. Like after Milan, after Paris, all that. And I was like, what brought you to Russia of all people, of all like influences to find, you know what I mean? Was it just the alphabet? What got you into it? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think so Nick Knight, when I was doing the NASCAR tees, Nick Knight really loved those t-shirts. And I was in London, I think maybe for like a Been Trill event, and he invited me to his office, and he invited me to do like a t-shirt collaboration with his studio for the launch of this hip hop photo show. He had just done a photo show in his gallery, and was all like punk photography, all this super beautiful black and white photography from like the 80s. And the next show that he was going to do was like this whole hip hop photo show. And he's like, yeah, I want to do like a tee for like the launch of the gallery show. And And so I left with that as being like that was the brief, and I agreed to do it. I was like, all right, so what am I gonna do? And so I just started thinking about like hip hop culture, like rap culture, and like what fascinated me about hip hop, and still does today, was just like style obsession with like rappers being so obsessed with like logos and branding and like the latest and greatest and newest of anything, cars, fashion, clothes, girls, jewelry, just style, taste. And so that's where I landed. I was like, style. It's all about style to me in hip hop. And I was like, I just want to like print style on this tee. And then I started thinking about like what was super stylish to me at the time as well, and it was like the Cyrillic alphabet. And I just really love like the letters. Like there's some letters that you recognize, and there's some letters that you just don't. And like I loved like the grouping of just like the familiarity and unfamiliarity of like these letters. It just looked trippy to me. I was like, 'cause I could read some of the letters and then it'd get all fucked up. And so I was like, man. So I hit up Cyber 69.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I hit up Cyber 69 because I had just met him on the internet through SoundCloud. I found one of his mixes on SoundCloud through his girlfriend.
It's crazy that you call him by his Instagram handle.
Yeah, Cyber. We all call him Cyber. And so I hit up Cyber. I hit him. I wrote him an email. I was like, "Yo, how do you write style in Russian?" And he was like, "Here it is." And so I just said that. I just copied and pasted that into like Photoshop. And just turned it into a logo, and then just literally went and embroidered it, I think, on a hat at first. It was like on a black hat with like a red logo. I made it in Chinatown. It was like a minimum of like 12 hats that you had to make. So I made 12 hats and just started giving them to my friends and started wearing it. And I was like, this is so fresh because I can't read it. And it looks dope and hard. And like Russia just represents power and strength to me. And it just felt dope to me. And style in general just means so much. It's bigger than fashion. Like, in everyone around the world, no matter who you are, any gender, religious background, everyone has style. And so I just thought it spoke to so many different people around the world as well. And so that's what I just started running with. And I just started carrying that logo over into more and more of the stuff I was making. I would just kind of print it here, or print it there. And I wanted to make the turtleneck famous, so I was making the most turtlenecks ever and giving them to my friends and selling them. And now it's kind of just become like my sub logo.
Yeah, how surreal is it to see, like, you know, just Americans embracing Russian culture through your clothing, and then on the flip side, like, going to Russia and then seeing people embrace DSNY that probably never even heard about the Department of Sanitation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking back. I was putting myself in like their shoes, and if I was like a kid out in Russia and, you know, someone was introducing like some cool uniforms to me from like a real agency in like their city, I was like, man, I might be into that. I think it might be kind of cool if it was like some police inspired uniforms or sanitation worker uniforms. If it was like real from a real city, that I was like, I might be into that. And so that's kind of how I thought kids would see it as well. And then maybe if you've traveled to New York, you may have seen like a sanitation worker on the street or a big truck on the freeway on your drive from JFK, you know? And so I felt like there were these reference points.
It's almost like a souvenir, kind of.
Yeah, it's almost like a souvenir.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I felt like that would kind of be like the reference points for kids in Russia, you know, becoming, I guess, interested in the collaboration.
And I really do think that like Russians really do kind of get style and do get all of this on a level that is really hard for like Americans to understand. Like, when you went over there, you probably saw it. Like, we watched that live stream that you guys did.
Yeah.
Just mad love, because you know why? Because I wasn't launching in like a New York or an LA or Paris or a London. I like went and shined a light on like Moscow, where like no one ever goes. And so to acknowledge and have recognized them as like a really cool group of like people that deserved to have a brand go launch there, they welcomed me. It was a very warm welcome, you know, it was like mad love. And again, like I'm also like a black dude coming, and I'm also American, and so going out there and be like, why do you care about like what? So I think there was that stickiness to the whole idea of it all.
Yeah, like they can't tell if you're being like,
like
sincere.
There's like this curiosity to it. And so, but then they also like are following me on social, and so yeah, so there's all of that kind of bubbling up to kind of creating this like really, I guess, like interesting like experience. And also, you know, I brought Virgil, and I had Cyber out there DJing. And so it was weird to have come like full circle. Like Cyber's Russian, and he was the one who gave me who translated the logo for me, and that logo was printed on the facade of the building.
Yeah, off KM20, right?
Like larger than life. Like it was and the facade of KM20 was like big as fuck. And
you're doing tattoos and stuff too.
Yeah, and I was giving out tattoos for free, only my logo, and kids were getting them like on very visible locations on their body, like on their hands. And so it just, that really said a lot to me as well. Like kids weren't getting the tattoos on like a hidden place, like under their armpit or like somewhere covered up. Like
they were ready to fucking rep.
They were ready to represent. And I had only done that idea because kids were already getting the tattoos before the event. Like Mark Goring.
Yeah, exactly. He's got it right there, right?
He's got it on his neck. He was, I think, the first person that got it. And then like other kids were getting them on their hands and sending me the DMs. So I was like, man, if this is a thing, I'm just going to put a tattoo artist in my event and like see how many other kids will get my logo. And it just went off. But again, it's not just my logo. It means so much more than just Heron Preston, the brand. It's bigger than my brand.
It's like a uniform of their own to like represent their ideals and stuff.
Exactly. Style.
And you said that you consider yourself like a style designer more than a fashion designer. Right?
Oh yeah, I think I said it on the
Sweden thing.
The Sweden thing.
We do our Nardwuar over here.
Yeah, yeah, style designer. Because I wasn't disciplined as like a fashion designer, and I remember looking into colleges and looking into like fashion design because I'd already started making T-shirts. So I was like, oh, like fashion is what I'm into because I have this T-shirt brand. So maybe I'll start doing fashion in school. And when I started looking into like, man, you got to learn how to sew. You got to like learn how to do all of this. I just want to make cool graphics, and I just want to make my ideas happen. Like I don't want to do all of that. So I didn't do fashion design. I did a different program at Parsons called Design and Management, which was kind of like a half and half discipline of like marketing for like creative industries and business for creative industries, and then like art classes and color theory and new media and Photoshop and design thinking and innovation classes. So those two disciplines kind of what, you know, that's kind of, I felt like that's what I was really into, was like the ideas and like the marketing of the ideas. And so I graduated from an art school with like a business degree. And so that's kind of, I think, how I ended up working for like Nike and doing the marketing stuff and like the creative consultancy that I was doing. But I was always just like a fresh kid. I was always a very tasteful kid. I was always a kid I had my T-shirt, my T-shirt collection. I was working at the store called True in San Francisco, which was right next door to Stussy at the time. And so all the Stussy, like it was the streetwear of San Francisco. Like I was a part of that like little bubble of like the San Francisco streetwear kids. And like I was working at this store called Red 5, which isn't around anymore. And so like that was the very beginning of me learning about streetwear through the owner of the store named Eric Ross, and really getting kind of involved in distributing my T-shirts. So I had like accounts through my connections at Red 5. So I was selling at like Fred Siegel in Los Angeles, and I was selling here in New York. I forget the shop I was in here in New York. Selling in Japan, like all my little Heron Preston T-shirts, and I had like a Thug Life T-shirt, and I had a Purple Rain T-shirt with prints. It was just like random ideas. Somehow, had this collection, and so yeah. Even through all of like the business and all of the marketing, everything was still rooted in creativity and art. I was at an art school. I was at a creative consultancy. I was at Nike doing all of like the cool creative stuff. So everything was still rooted in like creativity, but it was really driven by like ideas.
Yeah, that being said, how did it feel to like, launch your collection or relaunch your collection in Paris like earlier in the year?
It It was a little, I don't know. I mean, I guess it was like a little surreal. I never really, I wasn't even really thinking that big because I never, again, seen myself as like a fashion designer having like a full collection. I'd always see myself as more of like an artist and having more of these kind of one-off projects here and there. And I'd always done that. So the Givenchy shirt or like launching HPC, Trading Co. with all these like one-off ideas, or the Street Sweepers. So I'd always kind of like thought more in like these like singular kind of ideas, never bigger than that. And so I was gonna launch like this whole Blue Flames like hat for like another drop on my Trading Co. And I was telling Virgil, I was like, yo, I got this Blue Flames hat. I'm about to drop it. It's the new style hat. After just the black hat with the white writing, the next hat was going to be a Blue Flames hat with like these flames down the side. And then just style written on, embroidered on the front. And Virgil was like, that's all you're doing? And I was like, yeah, like another hat. It's going to go crazy. He's like, that's it? And I was like, yeah. He's like, bro, like you're not gonna make no money with that. Like you gotta
bigger.
like, huh?
He's like, think bigger.
Yeah, think bigger. He was like, think bigger. Like you gotta go harder now. Like now is the time for you to go harder with these ideas, not just doing just one hat anymore. He was like, you should talk to my people in Milan. And so that was the beginning of Heron Preston, like the brand, the collection, taking it to like the next level. So I went out to Milan, had some meetings, and then fast forward, I had my first collection presented in Paris. Then I did my second collection now.
So it's like from Canal Street to Milan.
Yeah, crazy. It's crazy, like journey.
Wow. And to go back to something we talked about earlier, like you do everything on the internet. So like we kind of wanted to know a little bit more about like how does, you've been enabled by the internet. You were on forums before. You met Virgil from forums, it sounds like, and Kirill through like Instagram.
SoundCloud, Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like how has that literally formed your entire creative process? Is it like because you have immediate access to feedback and like everybody that like your audience already, or how does your relationship with the internet work?
I think it's like relationship building, networking, connecting, sharing ideas, access to information that really is the feedback that helps like mold and shape and shift how I engage with my community around me. And so it's been super like, it's been like one of the greatest tools that I have incorporated into like my discipline. I just grew up on the internet, like that's where I would go after school. I would go and like chat on these like online, like underground hip hop forums. And there was like these like voice discussion boards, voice chats where like you would have to like tap down really fast in order to get your turn to like chat through the voice. There was like a chat room of like 100 people. I remember this like underground, it was like undergroundhiphop.com, like UHH.com or whatever. And so like I was like hieroglyphics, like all of these groups, all the new music we posted there, like Dell, like all like I'm a hip hop head from like San Francisco. So like,
you're a big Souls of Mischief fan.
Yeah, Souls of Mischief. While. Like my screen name was Opio, like
no way
316 on AOL.
That was a wild
So I was
guess.
hanging out on all these like hip hop forums, and so directly after school, I had like my first like internet crush. It was like the one girl on like the hip hop forum. Like everyone loved her. Like she was like my crush, and so I would hang out on the internet after school like every single day. And so I ended up, I think I hung out on the internet like so much. My parents were like, yo, you should just take like some computer science classes. And so that's eventually how I learned HTML, and that's how I like started learning like how to make websites.
It's crazy because like I think like people our age, like when you kind of come of age and you literally hang out on the internet, like I know kids maybe like 1 or 2 years younger than me that learn to program because of things like Neopets and things like MySpace. Like,
yeah.
Like literally like, I need a theme.
Yeah, MySpace.
And, and so they were like, well, I'm going to learn how to do HTML.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was like, man, I was 13 years old. I should have been doing that, man.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
If you wanted to get to listen to Little B, like I should
Yeah, just trying to hack like your MySpace page and like add like all these like glittery GIFs and like having music automatically play when you went to like someone's page. Like all these like hacks that you could like pimp out your page.
Infinite scroll.
control, just like having more than 8 friends. Like, oh, how do you have like 13 friends on your top 8? Like hacking stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So that was like the whole generation like that I was coming from, was like before things were automated and before there was like drag and drop and like click a button and that's what it is. Like we had to like learn how to like code a little bit.
Yeah. Is that how you kind of got in touch with Justin Jound?
Because all of, I guess, us like kids into culture and creativity, streetwear, the ones that had the blogs were the ones who like were connecting. Like, so like Virgil had the Brilliance, Jound had Jound, I had HeronPreston.com. And through all of that, like we just met each other. Like we knew about each other. And so, yeah, it was literally through the culture that brought us together online.
It was like a meetup. Like it was like we'll hang out someplace sometime.
Totally. It was like a straight up meetup. And like I remember like meeting Virgil for the first time in person because we had already been connecting online through email and all the discussion boards. But I was working at this Mexican restaurant here in New York called La Esquina. It was like a summer college job. And Virgil had just, in order to get to the restaurant to go sit at your table, you had to like walk down these steps and then you had to like go through the kitchen in order to get to your table. And so I worked in the kitchen next to the chef. I would like prep his like cilantro and get his knives and his like napkins ready. And then I would also run the food from the kitchen to the tables. And so my post was in the kitchen next to the chef, and I would just wait for his instructions. And like everyone would come past us to get to the dinner to the dinner table. And so Virgil walked right past me because he was having dinner that night. And I looked at him and I was like, and he looked at me and we kind of made the double take. And I was like, holy shit, Virgil, like, whoa, like, dude, like, it was crazy. Imagine meeting like your internet friend for the first time unexpectedly. Like, it wasn't a planned meetup. Yeah. It was like by surprise. And then after that, like, boom, like we were just like homies.
Yeah, you met Tom Sachs during that time working there, right?
Yeah, I did. So I had like worked all different positions at the restaurant. I remember doing my interview. In order to have stayed in New York, I had to get a summer job. My parents we were like, yo, if you don't get a summer job, you have to come back to San Francisco. So I was like, man, I got to get this job. Where am I going to get a job? So I go to the interview, and they're like, are you good with computers? I was like, hell yeah, I got a blog. I can code. Yeah, and I'm going to get it. I was like, man, I'm going to get an office job at this restaurant. I don't really want to work in a restaurant. Like, nah, but man, they're going to put me on a computer job. Awesome. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then like they called me back on the first day for training, and the computer was like the cash register in the taqueria. Oh. So I was like, oh fuck, they played me. They played me so hard. I'm like the taco stand cashier boy, like filling up people's lemonades. But at the same time, like it was an awesome job because I met Tom Sachs. I met all the coolest people in the neighborhood. Like I eventually started working in the cafe around the corner. And Tom Sachs has his studio literally around the corner from La Esquina. So he would eat lunch there every day because it was like the new hot spot, super bomb Mexican food as well.
By the way, La Esquina is like a top 5
it's like really good food. So Tom, he would be there every day, and I'm like super curious. And I'm also really into like people. I'm like a people person. I like watch everyone around me. I'm like, so I'm curious, like, who is this dude like eating here every day? Because it wasn't like the food was kind of expensive. So I was like, man, he's like dropping hella money every day on Mexican food. Like, who is this dude? Like, there's got to be some story to him. And I remember like bringing him like some tacos or something to the table. And I was wearing this like bootleg Rolex from Canal Street. Because I lived like a block away from Canal. I like lived in the neighborhood. And Tom was like, yo, that's a nice watch, man. I was like, oh, thanks. But it's not real. It's like fake. Like it's nothing. It's like $60 on Canal Street. He's like, no, it's not fake. It's real. And
it's like the most Tom Sachs thing.
Yeah. He was like, it's not fake. It's real. And I was like, I walked away. I was like, I guess it is real. It's like, I'll never forget that. And it spoke so much to like his work at the time. For him to have told me like, no, that's real. It speaks now so much to his work.
Exactly.
It's
that
crazy.
Is like the Tom Sachs thing. Like,
it's
no,
so
man, there's no bootlegs.
Yeah.
There's none.
No, it's like it's real. And if you kind of go back in his story and hear him talk about authenticity and like his like, I know now where he was coming from when he told me that was real because it meant so much to me. I had my own personal story to it.
Yeah, how influential has Tom been like as a mentor?
I mean, just his drive and his curiosity, and he's like I feel like he's like a big kid who's just like getting out all his ideas, and I just see myself in that same light. So just to have, and if you go to his studio, it's just been built out over like the past 20 years, and like it just looks like a straight up movie.
Yeah, I mean, I've interviewed him a couple times, and I went and I shot the studio for the magazine, and it's like I kind of, it's like Santa's workshop.
Yeah, it's like Santa's workshop. He's got like a plank for his like little cat to like walk around up top, and he's got like a Chanel surfboard, and he's got like all this like gadgets everywhere. And
He built the cat like a watering fountain.
Oh, he
like,
did?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like every single thing that could be like built into sculpture.
Everything is considered. The attention to detail is amazing, and he's just rad. And he really likes tequila too. I remember when we did this like Live Strong like art exhibition. It was for like the Lance Armstrong Live Strong stuff, and so every artist kind of interpreted like I guess Live Strong through their own lenses. And so Tom Sachs did this like bike that you would have to ride and like pump tequila into like a tequila shot glass. And so there's like, you can probably Google and find it. I might even have some like on my Flickr account. I remember I was looking at my Flickr account the other day. People use Flickr, but I saw I think I saw photos of like Tom and like Lance like doing shots of tequila.
Tom Sachs and Lance Armstrong.
Yeah,
wild.
All right, so I would be remiss if we didn't talk about like the next generation of like just creatives on the internet and Instagram more specifically, like, you know, you meet Gully Guy Leo.
Oh, yeah.
And then also like, you know, just like the influence that creatives like Lucas Sabat or Ian Connor have and their presence on Instagram as well. Like what are some keys that you could give, like, you know, that next generation living on the internet and like how they can impact street culture?
Don't try to do what Luca is doing. Don't try to do what Ian's doing. Like, they are very like special kids who are in very special circles that afford them to kind of do what they're doing. Like, do you like really like let them inspire you, but like do like write your own story as well, and get inspired by everything around you. But like stay true to like who you are and like what you know and like what's around you, and like use their stories to like drive your stories. But like don't try to like copy each other, and like don't try to like, you know, like, because again, like like it's just we're all our own unique people, you know. We're all our own unique people, and it just gets boring when you see kids doing the same shit all the time. And I know there's really amazing ideas out there, but you just have to be super confident and believe in like your ideas just as much as Ian and Luca and like they're believing in their ideas. You know what I mean? And I think that that's just like my advice is just like stay true and like not take any no's for an answer. You know, like just push through it. It's you know, it's not for everyone. You know what I mean? Like, I remember when I like left Nike, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do the next day. I had no backup plan. I had no job offers. I had nothing. But they wanted me to move to Portland, and this was like in the middle of Been Trill. And they noticed that I was doing Been Trill at the same time as I was working at Nike. And they would see me having so much more fun outside of Nike, traveling the world and doing a day trip to Paris and back to New York and going in the office on Monday, or a day trip to London, throw a party with Virgil and Matt and Justin, and then going back to the office the next day. And then all of a sudden having clothes in PacSun, but also having a desk job at Nike, and like, come to Portland, like move here. And it was on a Friday, and they were like, we'll give you through the weekend to kind of think about it. You know, we know it's a big decision. It's kind of like it was a surprise phone call, and we'll catch up on Monday. And I was like, no, I don't need the weekend to think about it. I know I don't want to move to Portland. And I had no backup plan.
You picked the boy band overnight.
Yeah, I picked the boy band. I picked having fun, and I picked believing in my ideas more than having that security, that job security. And so I just figured you got to have that confidence. You got to just have that confidence. You just like believe in yourself, believe in your ideas, believe in the people around you. And yeah, I think, you know, once you have that, you know, that's my advice. That's what got me to kind of where I am today.
All right, real quick, what's the deal with HP the Ghost, the Instagram page? And
Yeah. Well, so Heron Preston at Heron Preston has become like my brand, you know, like I have
work account.
It's my work account now. Like I have like 30 retailers who are expecting me to keep the brand hot, keep it fresh, always be on. You know what I mean? Like, I'm selling a lot of stuff now, and there's a lot of people who are behind me who are really trusting me that I will perform. And so I kind of pulled back a bit from like everyday kind of shit, parties and what I'm eating and like just randomness. But I missed that. And so I was like, man, I need to have somewhere for like all of this other cool shit. Like if I see some crazy shit on the street in New York and I want to shoot it, where am I going to put it? Like, I don't really do Snapchat anymore. Like Instagram stories kind of crushed all the snaps. So I don't really do, so I'm like, where am I going to put all this really cool stuff?
A Finstagram.
Yeah. That's what it's called. I learned, I just explained this to someone else and they told me about it. It's called like Finstagram.
It's fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's where it comes from? Yeah. So I have like, so I started like my fun Instagram just for anything that stimulated me throughout my day, from inspiration to my girl or whatever, just any like a regram of something cool that I see, or like, so I just needed that place. So that's why I launched HP the Ghost.
It's like the B-roll.
And I don't like write anything, and I don't follow anybody. Yeah. I just post. I just jounded it. It's just images, no text.
What about memes? Because like that Raph meme was hilarious.
What was the Raph meme?
What was the Raph meme? Like I saw Raph in the club.
Bumped into Raph the other day. He told me to get you a shot of 1942 or something.
That was like, where were we? That was the Met Gala after party at One Oak, and Virgil is DJing, and like Rocky and Bella and Kendall and Ferg, everyone, Luca, everyone's got like this booth, and so bottles just going crazy, and Raph just all of a sudden just shows up out of nowhere. And we all go crazy, like Rocky, like tapping me, like, yo, Heron, tell Virgil Raph is here. Tell Virgil Raph is here. Like, play the song. And like and so like we're all like shooting photos and shit. And like that was the photo that so we're drinking 1942. Yeah, that was like a rare night. That was a rare night, because I remember when Raph took the Calvin job and it was like still bubbling, and I don't think it had even been announced, and I was like having dreams of like Raph moving to New York and like seeing him on the streets of like New York, just like casually just going about his day, because he's like lives here now, and so I was like, man, when is that moment gonna be when I like see Raph like on the street, like at La Colombe getting coffee or something? But it happened to be One Oak with some 1942.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a good start.
It's a perfect story.
Good ending point. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thank you for finding time. Thank you for sitting down. Thank you for sharing a little bit of the story with us. And,
for sure.
And, kind of.
Yeah, I'm happy I got to like share the story, because I don't think there's a whole new like group of kids who are fresh on the internet who like don't even know me, you know what I mean? Or like my history, or like my past, or how I got to where I am today. So I'm happy that I was actually like able to like share like the history, the journey.
Of course, that's why we do that first question.
Vibes.
Yeah.